As adorers, we honor the sacredness of all creation.
As prophets, we reverence Earth as a sanctuary where all life is protected. As advocates of Earth, we choose simple lifestyles that avoid excessive or harmful use of natural resources. With these words, the adorers of the blood of Christ proclaim their faith-based commitment to environmental justice as expressed in their 2005 land ethic. The Adorers of the Blood of Christ are an international community of Roman Catholic women founded in 1834. In 1925, they established a ministry in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where their daily rhythm was rooted in a deep connection to the rich farmland that sustained their community. The Adorers' religious practice includes intentionally using and protecting their own land in a way that does not harm the earth. They are well aware that being forced to use their own land for a 42-inch fossil fuel pipeline will directly exacerbate the global climate crisis we now face. Indeed, Pope Francis, in his recent encyclical entitled Laudato Si', identifies climate change as, quote, one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day, end quote. He specifically identifies the intensive use of fossil fuels as a primary driver of global warming. In the end, Francis insists that addressing climate change is a moral and spiritual imperative for Catholics, due in part to the disproportionate harm that global warming is already having and will continue to have on the world's poorest, most vulnerable populations. The Adorers have a proven track record of defending the environment on religious principle. For the past 8 years, Adorers ministering in Guatemala have prayed and marched alongside local villagers to stop a dangerous gold mining operation that threatened their water, air, health, and safety. These efforts included nonviolent human blockades that were at times met with police brutality. Yet they persisted, and to this day, the mining operation remains at a standstill. Most recently, the sisters have been engaged in a struggle for environmental justice right here in Pennsylvania. 3 years ago, the Oklahoma-based company Williams Transco announced plans to install a large-scale, high-pressure fracked gas export pipeline through the sisters' Lancaster County farmland. Citing their religious opposition to fracking and any expansion of climate-altering fossil fuels, the Adorers refused to sign a lease and vowed to resist the project on religious principle. However, Williams ignored the religious objections of the sisters and pushed ahead with their plans. In the summer of 2017, local supporters of the Adorers joined the sisters in building a rustic outdoor chapel on their land, right at the edge of the proposed pipeline corridor, to serve as a tangible expression of their belief in the sacredness of the earth. When Williams learned of the chapel, they filed an emergency motion in U.S. District Court seeking immediate possession of the sisters' farmland in the hope of dismantling the sacred structure. They also requested authority to mobilize armed U.S. Marshals to prevent the dedication of this chapel on the Adorers' own land. The motion was denied. In a powerful demonstration of solidarity with the sisters, more than 300 people of faith took part in a moving outdoor prayer service to dedicate that chapel and defend the sisters' free exercise of religious expression. From that point on, the chapel became a site of faith-filled resistance to corporate exploitation of the earth. All through the fall and summer, weekly vigils were held by a variety of faith traditions. The Sisters' Chapel, along with their struggle to defend their long-held religious values, gained national and even international media attention, from CNN to the Washington Post, and from Philadelphia Inquirer to the BBC. When Williams still refused to honor the sisters' objections, the Adorers filed a federal civil rights lawsuit to prevent the forced installation of this pipeline on their land. The challenge invokes the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in an effort to honor the order's deeply held religious convictions. Even with their lawsuit still making its way through the courts, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission granted Williams the power of eminent domain to begin construction on the sisters' land. In a flagrant display of contempt for the order's religious freedom claim, Williams altered their own work schedule in order to begin pipeline construction on the sisters' property before pipeline installation began anywhere else in the county. The sisters sought an emergency stay on construction until their case was fully considered by the courts. That request was denied. The very next workday, Williams was unloading excavators on the sisters' Lancaster County farmland. That equipment was met by nearly 100 friends of the sisters who stood in their way, hand in hand, with songs and prayers on their lips. U.S. Marshals, State police and several local police forces were on site to enforce Williams' decision to trample on the convictions of this religious community. Before the day was over, portions of the Sisters' Chapel were forcibly dismantled. In addition, 23 peaceful women, men, elders, and children, ranging in age from 16 to 86, were arrested, handcuffed, and taken to county prison for courageously defending the sisters' religious rights. 2 weeks later, 6 more community members were arrested on the land in peaceful solidarity with the sisters, including an elderly Catholic priest. The contempt that Williams has shown toward this community of Roman Catholic women is exactly why Congress enacted the Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Meanwhile, the Sisters and Friends of Lancaster Against Pipelines continued gathering at the chapel for prayer, songs, and joyful defiance of the industry's flagrant violation of their land and religious values. In mid-February, an ecumenical Ash Wednesday service was held at the chapel under a white canopy with ministers from local Mennonite and United Church of Christ congregations joining the sisters in leading the reflections, prayers, and imposition of ashes. Palm Sunday brought an even larger gathering of community members to the chapel. The service held that day also marked the 93rd anniversary of the founding of the Adorers Columbia community. The chapel canopy was adorned with archival photos taken in the 1920s, showing that first generation of Pennsylvania sisters working those very same fields, tending the orchards and harvesting hay. Braving snow and mud, the sisters and congregants marched out into the construction corridor where they planted a 10-foot wooden cross. At the foot of the cross, they also created a heart-shaped prayer labyrinth out of straw bales, draped in crimson materials. Together, the sisters led those present through the stations of the cross around this life-size replica of the order's own heart and cross symbol. Resting directly atop the now buried but still unfinished pipeline, these sacred items, paired with the irrepressible faith of the people, transformed that recently desecrated soil into a site of triumphal reflection on the Passion of Christ. Williams was clearly unsettled by the celebration. Within days, they issued an order for the sisters to remove the cross and labyrinth from the right-of-way. The adorers refused. Instead, they added placards of their land ethic to the site, along with signs declaring, quote, "We continue to affirm our religious right and duty to challenge Transco's unholy and unconstitutional seizure of our land for a climate-warming fossil fuel project in direct violation of our deeply held religious convictions." Williams backed down and left the labyrinth and cross standing. In July 2018, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals announced that they were dismissing the sisters' First Amendment claim, leaving in place the lower court's decision to simply ignore Transco's and FERC's violation of the sisters' religious freedom. In response, the adorers issued the following statement, quote, "The adorers believe the court wrongly decided this case. Thus, even though the adorers are up against a powerful federal agency and a massive oil and gas industry with unlimited resources, the adorers believe that their faith and religious beliefs will ultimately prevail. At issue is nothing less than the future of our sacred earth." In October of 2018, the adorers filed a petition with the U.S. Supreme Court urging the 9 justices to force a reconsideration of their religious freedom claim. With the adorers' petition awaiting consideration, Williams brazenly entered the sisters' farmland, destroyed their straw bale prayer labyrinth, and dragged their cross off the field. 3 months later, in January 2019, the Supreme Court issued their disappointing decision to deny the sisters' petition. In fact, of more than 400 petitioners seeking review by the nation's highest court that month, only 1 request was granted. Can you guess the petitioner? Oil, gas, and pipeline giant Kinder Morgan seeking permission to violate key provisions of the Clean Water Act. Today, as fracked gas daily desecrates the sisters' farmland in rural Lancaster County, their story is far from over. Communities around the country continue to be inspired by the courage and creativity of this spirited resistance as grassroots movements, many fueled by faith, grow bolder and more numerous by the day. In April 2019, the sisters' partnership with LAP was featured in The New Yorker by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Eliza Griswold. The story has brought even greater national attention for our shared effort to defend this sacred earth. What's next in this sacred struggle? Only time and all of us working together can write the next chapter of this inspiring story.